Good morning, everybody. Core Use Bloody History. We are back. We're going to continue on with the testimony of Daniel Patrick Powers, Oswald's superior while he was at Biloxi, fundamentally. Before we get started, just to let you know, I have about 10 copies, hardcover, of the new book, signed, that are up for sale. Well, they're going to be up for sale. I'm going to add them to the Buymeacoffee. I'll put a link in the show notes. Honestly, I'm fucking pretty lazy, and I'm probably not going to do it today, but I'll do it for the next episode. Or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JFKbook in the next couple days, and you'll find I got 10 copies of the hardcover up there signed. They're $75 each, shipped domestically, and I got about 5 or 6 copies of a Warning from History softcover that are $60 shipped domestically. If you're international, it's going to be like $40 for additional shipping, if not more. So I'm not even wanting to offer that right now. All right, so we're going to pick up right from where we left off. Mr. Jenner asks, what was Oswald's response or attitude towards higher authority? Up to this particular period of time, I don't think he showed any attitude or response to higher authority other than he was like the rest of the trainees, if you want to call it that. He did what he was told, and that was it. I think his aggressive attitude came after he was away from his initial exposure to the Marine Corps type discipline. Were you with him during that period? I was with him overseas. Well, he was actually in the same unit as I was until I came home. And this is where I noticed that he had started to be more aggressive and outgoing in his manner. In other words, he took on a new personality, and now he was Oswald the man rather than Oswald the rabbit. Okay, so one thing we can say about Daniel Powers is that Daniel Powers was with him at the end of Jacksonville. They met after Jacksonville, and they moved to Biloxi together. And then from there, they both end up at El Toro for the draft. Then they get on the same boat, if I'm not mistaken, or they're supposed to. We kind of touched on this in the last episode. But I believe Powers and Oswald played chess on the boat, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe that was Richard Call. I don't know. It was one of those guys. We'll get it figured out. But it's obvious to me. And see, he knew the same Oswald over in Atsugi. So it's pretty obvious that the Oswald he knew was the real Lee Oswald, who was photographed with him at Biloxi. This was after you boys got overseas. Yes, I think so. I think this is when I noticed, it can be safe to say, that he did start to have more incidents of where he would stand for his own rights if there were rights to be had. In other words, he was going to take everything that came, and he wasn't going to let anybody else get what he could have. Do you remember anything in that particular incident that you might think might be helpful to the commission during that 1-month period of time that you were at El Toro? At this particular time, I have no memory of the individual at all. It seems to me that he reported in after I did. I think this is where, again, something is in my mind of Texas. He said he was in Texas for this period of time, and him coming, being there first, the most we got into, I think, we got into an August draft, and I don't think he was in the same draft that I was in. I think I reported in and got in the July draft. Now, again, I'm not sure on this, but it seems to me that he was in a different draft than I was, and we were all in the same barracks to start, and then they separate you in these replacement drafts, and again, it's in my mind when he reported in or possibly came in late off his leave. He took an extra week or something. It might be in my mind. I can't say for sure, but still remains there that he was in Texas, or Texas was the area he was visiting, or he took his leave. Okay. All right. I'm detecting a major problem here. Here's the major problem. He just said Oswald took an extra week, came in late off his leave. Okay, so we have on the documents all these guys show up at El Toro on the 12th of July, including Martin Strand. But Oswald's supposed to be there on the 9th of July. But then we see that, or I don't know if I mentioned this, but I did see that Martin Strand is on the duty roster as having been back in El Toro on the 4th. The 4th of July. Doesn't make any sense to me. So all the dates these guys are supposed to be getting back are not the dates they actually got back. Why? I don't know. So Oswald's supposed to be back on the 9th. Here it's saying he took an extra week. This is a big deal. This is a very big fucking deal. And I'm going to ask all of you to think this through, and I'm going to take some time and think this through. But what does he mean he took an extra week? Did he get back like the 15th? No, that's not possible because the boat left on like the 10th or the 11th or something like that, right? So no, that's not possible. How the fuck did he take an extra week? How did he take an extra week? This doesn't make any fucking sense. And this is a big deal. All right, I'm not going to figure it out now, so I'm going to have to move on. It might be in my mind, I can't say for sure, but it still remains there that he was in Texas, or Texas was the area he was visiting, or he took his leave. Well then, you boys were shipped out from El Toro. Yes. For overseas. Yes. Was he on the same ship? Well, he must have been in the same draft. He was on the same ship. Wait a minute, didn't he just get done saying he wasn't in the same draft? From what port did you sail? We left from San Diego. Do you remember the name of the ship? No, I don't remember the name of the ship. Would it refresh your recollection if I uttered the name Bexar, B-E-X-A-R? Would that mean anything to you? I think possibly yes. I think it was on the Peter boats and the Mike boats. What is a Mike boat? These are the terms given to these landing crafts that were on the ship itself. Yes, they're running over the ship. They're used for loading and unloading of supplies and running back and forth while we're on the harbor, taking people off leave and from. Now, your embarkation was, would you check your orders? The 21st of August, am I correct? I'm not sure. From here, I don't have any orders. All right. I think these orders are all grouped, are in the group orders, and they are not given to individuals as such. I see. All right. You went from San Diego to what port? What foreign port? Yokohama. Again, I'm not sure. I think it was Yokohama. Okay, so I'm sorry, but this fucking guy, his testimony is starting to remind me of the testimony of Lillian Moret and Robert Oswald. And we know those people are liars, right? And so, why is he doing this? The pattern I'm detecting here, he's asked the question, what port did you pull into? And he goes, Yokohama. And then he says, again, I'm not sure. I think it was Yokohama. So, I don't understand. What is your problem here, Mr. Powers? Is it Yokohama? Do you think it's Yokohama? Are you not sure? Those are three different fucking answers. This reeks of anti-interrogation training. Mr. Jenner says, Yokosuka rather than Yokohama? Mr. Powers says, yes, there's two of them right in the same proximity. Yokosuka is probably the right one. I'm not sure now. Okay, so he went from Yokohama to Yokosuka. See, he doesn't fucking know. He doesn't know what he's supposed to be saying. I'm starting to detect that he might be a liar. What was the military base that we reported to? Yes, Atsugi. A-T-S-U-G-I, is that correct? That's correct. And that is the Marine base. It's a Navy base with Marine squadrons flying out of it, but its primary mission is a Navy base. Now, were these same boys, Bandoni, Brereton, Camerata, yourself, Schrand, and Oswald, were you still a group? I don't think Bandoni was part of the group. No, he must have been because I have... Wait a minute. Okay, see, here we go again. I don't think Bandoni was part of the group. No. And in his next sentence, he says, he must have been because I have pictures. And then the next sentence is, I don't think that he... And then he's cut off. What are we to make of this? I don't think Bandoni was part of the group. No. He must have been because I have pictures. I don't think that he... And then he's cut off. Mr. Jenner is keen, and he's picking up on what Mr. Powers is doing, and he cuts him off. Jenner says, by the way, do you have any pictures of these taken during the course of your time in the Marines, which Oswald appears? Just the one picture I have of him appearing in a class-type photo when we got out of Keesler Air Force Base, and it shows Marine and Air Force personnel that graduated. I've never run across any pictures of him of barracks life or anything like that. Going back to your original question, Brereton was on it, and Camerata and Schrand. Maybe Schrand came later. I can't say for sure. But Oswald and myself, I think that Bandoni went on the East Coast and Brereton went to Iwakuni, which is another Air Force, rather Marine base. And Camerata went down to a helicopter base somewhere in Japan, down the harbor somewhere. I used to call him on the phone once in a while and talk to him. And Brereton, I think, no, by gosh, maybe Bandoni was down at, no, that was Mike Caney. We were flying between the Philippines, and if he would stop at Iwakuni, I would stop in and see Mike. Where? Iwakuni. This is a base in the lower part of Japan. IOWC, and Empower says IOWAKONNI, I think. Iwakuni, i.e. possibly. I think it's, I don't know. I'm lost where I was. Yeah, Powers is full of shit. I'm starting to realize he's full of shit. And he couldn't keep his story together. That's probably why he got killed. Seems to me that Brereton was over there too at Iwakuni. But I don't recall if I possibly saw him over there once or twice. It was either on a football trip or when I was flying down to the Philippines after wrestling season. Now tell us about the trip over to Yokosuka, the life on the boat and what he did and what you did with what things you did together, if any, conversations that you had, those that you overheard, your opinion of him during that period, and reaction of the platoon or group to Oswald. At this particular time period, you're starting to get into, say, the rank association that people of higher rank associate with people of lower rank at this particular time period. You do see it more coming in the group relationship, and this was brought about by my becoming a corporal. And I wasn't assigned some of the tasks that the privates, first class, or the privates were assigned. And I recall I didn't have to do anything going over, and there were some duties assigned naturally. And with him, as an individual, I can remember that he taught me how to play chess going over. And he was quite proficient chess player. And, well, let's not say he was real proficient. He used to beat me, and it wouldn't take too much proficiency to beat me. And he would sit and play, and we would maybe play, usually we play one game a day, and sometimes we play 4 to 8 hours playing chess. 4 to 8 hours playing chess. And I got to a point where I beat him once in a while, and it would irritate him a little bit that someone beat him. But not to the point where he would get violent or anything of this nature, but he was real happy and pleased when he would win. And again, looking back at this, it gives me some impressions about him. He was real happy to win, like he was accomplishing something in his life. And he used to read quite a bit. I remember we got these paperbacks, and there was some good literature in these, and he would swap books back and forth, and he would never be reading any of the shoot-'em-up westerns or anything like that. Normally, it would be a good type of literature, and the one that I recall was Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, and he had for it a period of time that I would want to read it for myself, and as it came about, he did let me have it. I think I still have the book. Do you recall the titles of any other books that he read? Oh, I'm not saying that he read them, but the reason that I recall these titles is because I still have most of these paperbacks, that I kept quite a few of these, and they were The Age of Reason and The Age of Enlightenment. And whether he read them or not, I'm not sure. But I think there's something on the greatest president of the United States and democracy and books of that nature. Where'd you obtain these books? They were given to the troops. I'll use that for lack of a better term. Periodically throughout the voyage going over, where they got them, I don't know. I think they probably just picked them up, and it was standard procedure, I assume. They were books that were distributed through the Marines. That's correct. And you could read them or not, as you saw fit. Right. And your recollection is that you do recall Oswald did read Leaves of Grass. Right. Whether he read the other books, I'm not sure. But this leads me to the impression that he was trying to read something that was deeper than the average paperback that you see in the drugstore or something like that. These were books which you were interested in. Yes, these were books which I was interested in, mainly because the image that I held at the time, that I was more educated than the other individuals, and in order to maintain this image, and for my own personal satisfaction as well, I read these books. And I think this is whether he read these books for his own personal satisfaction or to create an image similar to the ones that we had. I say we, the people that had more education than the average Marine there. Was he a voracious reader? What do you mean by voracious? Did he read a great deal? I can't say truthfully. I think everyone at that particular time read more than they possibly did at any other period that they had in the Marine Corps. Mainly, you're in a limited space, and this was the one thing to do, and it was easy to do, and you could entertain yourself this way. Yes, I take it was not your impression then, at least at this stage of the game. He devoted a great deal of time to his reading as distinguished from what other Marines were doing in that regard. Well, I don't know. It seems to me when we were in Mississippi that he did read some, he was doing further reading than what normal individuals was doing at the time. I can't recall what would substantiate that in my mind. It just stuck in my mind that he did some reading or all during this period of time that he was an individual that rather than play poker or go out on liberty, he was just as well content to stay and read a book or things of this nature. And this may be that he was outside of the group and he did this to... You mentioned poker. So I assume that you played poker on the trip over. I don't play cards. Well, were there poker games, however, on the way over? I imagine there was. There was card games to some nature, whether it was poker or something, I don't know, to be truthful. I don't recall. Did Oswald engage in the card games whenever there were... I don't know, I don't recall. Do you recall whether he did any gambling? I don't recall, no, sir. Anything else that you recall occurred on this ship, either something that occurred or impressions that you have now of this man during this period of time? No. For the purpose of perhaps refreshing your recollection, was there an occasion in which he made some comment that all the Marine Corps did was teach you to kill, and after you got out of the Marines, you might be good gangsters? Yes, he made that statement. Now, whether it was at this particular time or not, I don't know. I'm not sure. Do you recall that he made that statement? That statement was made, and I think he was probably parroting somebody else that made the statement previously. And I think it was a common statement, but as I recall, he did say this, yes. But now, when we're playing chess at one period of time, whether it was on the ship or not, I'm not sure. Possibly it could have been in Japan, but it would most likely have been on that ship. I take it, however, that this you might classify as some gripping, yes, over the Marines. This would be normal, or something similar. You wouldn't attach any significance to it. Somebody would say the Marine Corps stinks or something of this type, and whether one individual said it or another, you wouldn't attach any significance to it. I see. Atsugi's about 35 miles from Tokyo, isn't it? Yes, it is. When you reached Atsugi, what was your assignment? We were assigned to Marine Air Control Squadron 1 and assigned to crews within this squadron. Did you have some abbreviation for that? MACS-1. And you were headquartered at the Naval Air Station at Atsugi, Japan? Yes, sir. Oswald, what did he serve as? Was he a radar operator? Power says, I assume he was a radar operator. From here, I lost almost total contact with the individual other than just seeing him. I played football during the fall, and during this period of time, we would play. We played in the bowl games, and the squadron went down to the Philippines, and I stayed in Japan. Okay, so let's make a mental note of this. So Powers and Oswald are in MACS-1. And he says here, we played in the bowl games, and the squadron went down to Philippines, and I stayed in Japan. Okay. He stayed in Japan when Oswald goes to the Philippines. Jenner says, you didn't go to the Philippines. And Power says, I did at a later date, but when the rest of the squadron went down to the Philippines, they went down, probably sometime in November. And I stayed down and played football. And then after that, I was wrestling. I wrestled for a while. And then out of the blue came orders to go to the Philippines. And from that time, I think was the time, sometime in the middle of January. Yeah, you're correct. It was January. So here's some other issues that I'm having here. He's talking about he stayed behind in Atsugi when the rest of the group went down in the Philippines. Okay. So he's saying he's implying the whole group went together, right? The problem with this is that this is at a time when Oswald will shoot himself in the left elbow. That, I believe, happened around the end of October or October 27th-ish, because they were going to put him on a boat like the next day. And so he shoots himself to get out of going on that boat. Why then does that group that he's in, MACS-1, why do they then get transferred November, 14th or 15th? It's middle of November when they transfer MACS-1. So why were they going to stick Oswald on a boat the next day if it wasn't with the rest of his group? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then if it wasn't with the rest of his group, why would he have to shoot himself to get out of going? What happened? Was the other Oswald on that boat? See, that's what I kind of think. I kind of feel like we're talking about Lee Oswald here, but I'm pretty sure Harvey Oswald was going to be on that boat, and that's why he did it. because they couldn't be two Oswalds on there. You'd think that the guys handling this in the Marines would be smart enough, but I just don't understand. I just don't know. But the dates here in October and November through January when he gets back from Philippines is very important. And then the next time he leaves is when he goes to Taiwan. And that we'll get to that another time. What was the function of MACS-1? It was a squadron composed of a radar group. About how many men? Oh, an estimating, I would say 100 personnel at the most. And its function was to support landings with the control of aircraft to a particular target areas or target sites. And you would control the aircraft by radar rather than trying to use it all by visual flight. When you say control aircraft, what do you mean by that? You would not actually control the aircraft by flying it yourself, or the operator or pilot would have to control the aircraft, and you would direct him as far as his turn is concerned, and his degrees and his turn 90 degrees right, and you would want to control him to an intercept, so to speak, to another aircraft, and you would intercept it until he got in range or where he could see it visually and they took over. Okay, so this is where I have a major problem with this. When you go through what the MOS is, it's clearly not a radar operator. It's aircraft maintenance and repair, which would correspond with Alan Feld saying they went to Memphis, right? The bottom line is no one ever can put fucking Oswald behind a radar unit. The closest anyone can ever put him is Joseph Gajewski, and that's his sergeant out in Natsuki who says that he was a plotting board operator, which means he didn't go behind a radar unit. He stood at the clear plotting board, okay? But then you got to remember he was in trouble all the time, or in the hospital, or on mess duty, or admin duty, or fucking guard duty, right? The guy was almost never in a fucking radar unit. Plus, the description of the MOS course, the Aircraft Warning and Control and Operator, clearly describes that it's an introductory course, and it teaches you how to detect like problems with the machinery. Okay, so him saying that these guys were fucking radar operators is sketch to me from the jump, because that's not what they were doing. Well, maybe other people in that group were, but see, if you remember, the group at Biloxi was only 6 Marines, and everyone else, 20-something people, were all Air Force. Right, and so. I don't know what that means. Why is that? Kind of makes me think that the real heavy duty radar operators, the ones who took the 33-week radar course, those are the guys who were from the Air Force, most likely. All right, so and you would be communicating with them in some fashion. Yes, you would have them on radio, and at the same time, when we were in Natsuki, we were assigned, it seems to me, a particular sector of the horizon to cover to protect against incoming foreign aircraft, and you plotted it all on the board. You called it a bogey coming in, and they would scramble aircraft and intercept this bogey if it didn't have the identification system on. And these were simulated enemy. Yes, I would say in our operations that they were in the Philippines, as I recall, it was all simulated. When we were in Japan, however, you would get the actual thing where you would have the scramble aircraft on a hot bogey. I think it's the term that they used, and maybe it would be a Russian aircraft or Chinese aircraft straying into this particular area. And they would scramble an aircraft after it and go up and take a look-see. And that's as far as I knew. And so while you were in Japan, you would actually be looking for hot bogeys. Yes, I actually never spent that much time on the site. I was playing football or... Yes, so as I recall, that is what we used to do. Did Oswald play football? No, he was not athletic in any form. Did he engage in any athletics? Not while I was in contact with him, no. You mentioned when you boys were in Keesler, you sometimes went to the gym. Did he go to the gym and work out? I can't recall that he ever did, no, sir. You eventually rejoined the squadron or group, did you, in the Philippines? Yes, sir. And when was that? That was in the middle of January or February of 1958. Yes, sir. And where were you in the Philippines? QB Point. CUBI? Yes, QB Point. And what was the nature of that installation? It was just temporary quarters for the squadron, and they were caught in between. They were in an operation early in November, and then they had this something. Would that be November of 57? Yes. Something flared up, I believe, in Indonesia. We're in that area, and they held the squadron on the ship for a particular period of time, and then there was another operation going to start in February or sometime in March, and they just, of 1958. Yes, sir. Instead of sending them back up to Japan and then have to come all the way back again, they just put them ashore at QB Point. And they just set up temporary base and continued the operation out of there. There was actually no radar site set up in that area, and we just got the gear and other material and trucks and apparatus and things. And equipment was repaired and made ready for the next operation. And during your stay at the Philippines, were you ever at Subic Bay instead of QB Point? QB Point and Subic Bay are close proximity. QB Point is the landing area, actually, and Subic Bay is the harbor, and you can almost call it one actual installation as far as I was concerned. But they were designated QB Point was the landing strip and Subic Bay was the landing area. In some of Oswald's autobiographical material prepared either then or later, he refers to the fact that he was at Subic Bay. And that doesn't appear in the official orders, and we wondered where he got that, and now you explained it for us. You traveled in between both as far as they had the swimming point there. I remember that was at Subic. Isn't it Subic? I don't want to say. I thought it was Subic. I'm probably wrong. I won't say that you're wrong. I think you're right. It's QB Point and Subic Bay. Yes, there was actually just one installation in my mind. They were separated, but one was the harbor for ships and the other was for the aircraft. Now, was the same group that you described earlier that came from Jacksonville, Florida, still together at QB Point when you rejoined the squadron? Okay, so I got to emphasize this. This question here is very important to you and me. It's very important in the study of the two Oswalds, okay? It has no fucking bearing on the assassination whatsoever, and I don't know why the fuck they're asking it, other than they are completely aware of the two Oswalds, and they are digging at questions that they shouldn't care about because they shouldn't make a fucking difference, but they do make a difference because they're verifying which Oswald was where when. Do you understand? This is the pattern that you will see throughout all the Warren Commission testimony when it came to people who knew Oswald before. When it came to people who knew Oswald either in Russia... See, now that I'm fucking thinking about it, Jesus Christ, the Warren Commission goes into enough questioning about what happened in Russia for me to start to think that there might have been some shenanigans over there. Despite the fact that, from a logical perspective, Lee should be out the picture by October of 59, right? So, but just the fact that here Albert Jenner is asking these questions to Powers about was the whole group still together, right? Because they're ultimately going to cross-reference everyone's answers to try to determine who knew who when. And I'm pretty confident when you get to the bottom of that, you find that there is an overlap with Martin Schramm and his brother, Raymond Schramm, who... I was just reading about Raymond Schramm again today. I was going through the missing chapter book again. I can't remember the fucking guy's name. Square peg, round hole guy. That's what I'll call him. But that's a fascinating thing. And I think that's why they ask these questions. They ask these questions because they're trying to determine which Oswald these people knew. Because the whole Warren Commission knew it too. All right, let me continue. But all but certain elements. I think the people in my particular group that originated in Jacksonville, the only people that were left was Schramm, Oswald, and myself. And the rest of them were dispersed in Japan or the Far East area or in the United States somewhere. And did an incident occur with respect to Mr. Schramm? Yes, he was. This happened after I arrived from the Japanese mainland. He was on guard one evening and he was shot to death. Now, I've never seen the official report or anything, but the scuttlebutt at that time was that he was shot underneath the right arm and it came up from underneath the left neck. It was by a shotgun, which we were authorized to carry while we were on guard duty. Were these also sometimes called riot guns? Riot guns, yes. And that's the only thing that significance I attached to it other than he was either leaning against the shotgun or fooling with it, but he was shot anyway. Was there, you don't know what the official finding was with respect to, no, I do not. I never had access to anything of this nature. Was there any scuttlebutt about it? No, other than that he was fooling with the weapon. Other than that, we couldn't, as I recall, we could never realize how a guy could have shot himself there other than he was leaning on it in this way, and boom, it went off. As far as you boys were concerned at the time, was there any scuttlebutt or speculation about any one of you being involved in that incident? No, not to my recollection at all. When I say you, that includes Oswald. Not that I know of, sir. No, sir. Weren't there some instructions in connection with the use of these riot guns when you were on guard duty that you would keep the chamber free of slugs? I'm almost sure. Again, I can't say for sure, but it seems to me that we were issued 3 shells. And again, I'm not sure. It seems to me that we were not supposed to put them in the weapon or supposed to put them in the weapon and keep it out of the chamber. In other words, you jacked it into the chamber if you needed it, but your chamber itself should be kept free to avoid accidents. Yes, this was the rule because you would have to click them in order to get them out this way, in order to avoid an incident such as happened. Did you boys do any maintenance work in connection with your radar scanning assignment? We were not trained to do it, no. They had the assigned personnel do it. Do you recall anything in this connection with respect to guard duty relating to some kind of special airplane? Yes, this happened again, I think, after the rest of us. The squadron left to go back to the Japanese mainland, and some of us were assigned temporary duty in QB Point there. I believe there were 2 of us or 3 of us from the squadron. Who were they? Murphy, I believe, is one of them, and Private First Class Murphy. And I don't recall the other individuals, who the other individuals were. But anyway, we were assigned there, and at this particular time, they were closely guarding a hangar. And as it developed, this was not known then what it was. It was a U-2 aircraft, but this was after the rest of the squadron left, which Oswald was included in for the mainland. Oswald was included in a group that had returned to the mainland. Yes, sir. Was Oswald still at QB Point when Martin Schrand was shot? I believe he was, yes. The whole squadron was there then, so he must have been there, yes. But Schrand's guard duty was not guard duty in connection with these special airplanes of which you now speak. Well, no, I don't believe so. I can't say for sure what it was regarding, but I don't think so. I think they were there on site guarding the equipment that he had there, and it seemed to me that the Air Force moved in that particular hangar after the squadron went up. I think this is correct. Was there did you have an assignment there when you were shipped to Corregidor? Hang on a second, something I feel like I got to comment on real quick. So, so none of this stuff had anything to do with the U-2. Right? People keep trying to put the U-2 stuff on Atsugi and the U-2 stuff here at Corregidor, and it's completely irrelevant. They were guarding what's called the crypto van. The crypto van, okay? No, they didn't have any Bitcoin up in that van. We're talking about cryptography. We're talking about encryption. We're talking about the precursors to Bitcoin, 50 years before Bitcoin. That's exactly what they're talking about, because all the stuff is connected. All this early encryption stuff that they were doing in the military all led to SHA-256 and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty fascinating that Oswald was involved in this kind of stuff. But this is where some of the speculation comes that Oswald had a crypto clearance. Crypto just means not mystery. It's super top secret, and you're not supposed to know what it is. But yes, it was in the van were encryption devices that they would use for signals, kind of like what is it, the Enigma from World War II. Let me see. Was there did you have an assignment when you were shipped to Corregidor? Yes, this assignment came between when I originally flew into QB Point, and then the squadron went on another operation where they were preparing. After they prepared their equipment there, and we went down to Corregidor, and we stayed there approximately a month or 6 weeks at the most, and then we came back, and then the people, they dropped off the 4 or 5 personnel that were on temporary duty, and the rest of the squadron continued on the mainland. Was Oswald a part of the group that was assigned to Corregidor? Yes, the whole squadron was assigned to it. And what'd you do at Corregidor? We participated in I think it was the 3rd Marine Division in the operation of military exercises. The same sort of thing you'd been doing back in QB Point. Yes, with the exception that now we were plotting simulated aircraft, scanning for it. Any incident occurred during that period involving Oswald? No, nothing I recall. Something sticks in my mind about being on mess duty, but I can't recall what the incident was. I have a picture of it in my mind. You did mention to the FBI when you were interviewed that he was on mess duty, and I assume in the first place he was not on mess duty all the time when he was in the Philippines, was he? No, you're assigned. Privates and private first class are assigned this duty periodically. I think you're assigned 1 week out of the year. This was not a mess duty assignment by the way of punishment. No, I don't think so. How long were you at Corregidor? A couple of months? I want to say 4 to 6 weeks, but it could have been longer. What was your means of transportation to and from Corregidor? LST. That's a landing ship tank. Yes. And when was this? Along about March of 1958. Is that your recollection? I think it was. It was this late February, early March period. When you returned to QB Point, you stayed there, but Oswald and some of the other members of the squadron returned to Japan. Yes, I think they left out four. Four of us stayed behind at QB Point. Did you return then to Atsugi? Yes, I did. About when? I think it was in May of 1958. Yes, sir, late April or early May of 58. When you reached Atsugi, was Oswald there? During this time period, I think he was there, but it was shortly after or just before I got there. It was that he shot himself in the hand or in the leg or something. I don't remember which part of the body it was. I think he's got that timing mixed up. Because I think he did that in like the late 57. I think he did it earlier. I don't remember which part of the body it was. In the left arm or elbow? I'm not sure. I couldn't truthfully say what it was. He was in a different part of the barracks, and I think it was in the evening that they hauled him out in an ambulance. Yeah, it must have been. What was your information, and what was still your information with respect to the incident, how it occurred and whatnot? He was fooling with a weapon, whether he was cleaning it or what he was doing, I don't know. You see, this is what I recall. He was cleaning the weapon and it accidentally discharged, and he was hauled away, and I think he was charged with carrying a concealed weapon or something of this nature. I'm not sure. They brought him up for court-martial. Whether he was actually court-martialed then, I don't know. Was this a privately owned weapon? I think so. All the less, it wasn't. I don't think it was a government issue. I think it was a small caliber. I think it was a .22. Yes, a .22 pistol. Yes. What was the scuttlebutt about that particular incident, if any? Nothing. It just, the name, again, stuck to Ozzy Screwed Up Again, or something like that. That was probably the general statement. I think this was the feeling of the group at that time. Now you use an expression, screwed up again. I'm going to ask you now what was the reputation of Oswald and the attitude of the squadron with respect to him. Well, going back to during this period of time, I don't think this idea of him being a somewhat weaker individual held. Well, he was in the squadron here physically. He was not an overpowering individual, and Ozzy, I think, stuck with him most of the time through the time he was in the Marines, or at least the period that I was associated with him, and he did what he was told and never went out of the way to do any more, or just doing at least minimum that he could do as far as any type of work or anything like that. And he would screw up once in a while. And now in the terms of the Marine Corps, it would mean that he wouldn't always present himself in a first-class manner as far as dress or shave or sloppy in appearance sometimes. And how was he getting along with his fellow Marines during this period? I think they accepted him just as they did everyone else because, again, you have a mixture of personalities. And I don't recall that he was friendly with any one particular person more than the other. Again, I'm not sure because he was in this particular crew. Was there any scuttlebutt or rumor that he shot himself to get out of the service? I don't know. There might have been. Now that you'll recall, you say that you don't. You recall it to mind. I'm not sure whether I want to recall it or something that is actually fact. Yes, I couldn't say truthfully, but in any matter, it was pure scuttlebutt. It was pure speculation. Yes, because nobody actually knew what was going on. What was the scuttlebutt as to his court-martial? Was that because he had the unregistered or private weapon? Now that you say that, this court-martial, this may be where they came in and they were going to give him a court-martial for shooting himself to get out. Again, maybe this is something, again, I want to recall, or if it's actually true, now that you mentioned it, there's something of that nature. When you use the expression, something that you want to recall, what do you mean by that? I take it is you want to avoid the tendency to recall something that I've heard somewhere else, more than a speculation or hearsay, and you're telling me that you're trying to confine yourself to actual fact. Yes. And you're making that distinction for that reason. Yes. Was there any rumor or scuttlebutt that he had one time been given some psychiatric attention? Now that you mention it, he might have been put into the, he might have been sent to the psych ward in Yokohama. Again, I'm not, now that you mention it, it comes to my mind. Do you have any, is this in the area of guessing? It's a scuttlebutt type thing. It's guessing in no way to substantiate it or anything of this nature. Okay. What did Oswald do for entertainment on leave? This seems to me now that he made a statement that this was after he went out and procured or secured a female companionship and set up housekeeping or whatever you want to call it in Japan. And this was a common practice. It seems to me one time he made a statement that he didn't care if he returned to the United States at all. Now I'm almost, I can't say for sure, but I attribute this statement to him again. Did he set up housekeeping? Set up some Japanese girl? Is that what you mean? Yes, this was the normal procedure over there, the practice with a lot of individuals, and I think that he was one of the ones that went for this type of thing. And I'm not sure whether he did, but I can attribute this statement to him that he did. In other words, you have a recollection of him having said that somewhere. Yes, he said that, and again, looking back, he was finally attaining a male status or image in his own eyes, and this is what he wanted to. This is why he wanted to stay in that particular country. But he did say something to the effect that he'd just as soon stay in Japan. Yes, rather than return to the United States. Yes. Were you given liberty when you were at Atsugi the way you were given liberty at Biloxi? That is, at certain hours of the day or weekends, you would have liberty. G, you have to secure liberty cards to get off the base at Atsugi. And by doing this, some weekends you had a duty weekend, but you have to be all squared away as far as your duty weekend. And you have no disciplinary action or anything of this nature against you before you got your liberty card. And then you checked out to the sergeant on duty and went on liberty. How often were you permitted this liberty? As I recall, you could get it on every day. What about weekends? And say weekends, and possibly once a month you had duty weekend, and so 3 weekends out of a month. So you would have 3 out of the 4. Yes, per month. Possibly every 5th one we stood, but I think it was 3. In other words, 3 out of 4 you had liberty, and one of the weekends, the 4th one, you stood on duty at camp. Yes. Did Oswald tend to take all the liberty that he could? I couldn't truthfully say. All right, what was that operation called in the Philippines? Operation Strongback? I believe the second one was Strongback. Yes. The first one was Philbin, Philbin. I believe the second one was Strongback, yes, and Kerry Thornley participated in Strongback in his aquatic assault unit, which is not on his training anywhere. When you say the second one, what do you mean by it? The first one they went down to when I stayed down to play football. I don't remember what that was. But the one you attended was Operation Strongback. I think so, yes, sir. Were you boys ever sent to Formosa? Yes. This was on our way home. Now, this wasn't... he was still in Japan, as I remember. He must have been, yes, he was still in Japan. And on our way home, we were sent to Formosa, and no one got off the ship. We just picked up some civilians, I believe, there. But Oswald was not with you there. No. And then we just went on across. While you continued to have acquaintances and contact with Oswald, did his rank change from private to private first class? I don't recall. Okay, you see, this is another one of those questions. He's asking the question because they're trying to differentiate which Oswald they're dealing with. Because we have conflicting information on when Oswald was promoted to private first class and who knew him as private first class when. Like Donald Goodwin knew him as a private first class all the way back in Camp Pendleton, at a time before he ever got promoted to private first class, right? So we have some conflicting information going on here with Oswald. And so, yeah, we don't, who knows? Do you recall Oswald having received a discipline as a result of the court-martial involving the discharge of the .22 caliber pistol? I think this came after. If it did come, it probably came after I left Japan. I see. I arrived home on July 4th, so it must have been en route most of June. But you don't recall any punishment that was meted out to him? I don't know, no, sir. And Mr. Jenner then says, off the record. And then whereupon discussion was had off the record. And Mr. Jenner then says, back on record. Now, in connection with your remarks that he stated to you that he'd just as soon stay in Japan, do you recall, was there any scuttlebutt in the squadron that he applied for an extension of his stay in Japan? I don't know. I can't say that I recall anything because of a lot of people did make this kind of statement, and you never again attached any significance to it. Some individuals did extend, rather ask for an extension. Whether he did or not, I don't know. What about Oswald's drinking habits or propensities? I think that he probably maybe experienced inebriation, maybe possibly for the first time while he was in Japan, extensively at least, and other than that, I don't know. A lot of the guys just went out, and that's all they went out for, to get drunk, and that was it. I don't know. But you have no impression of Oswald in that particular connection. No, nothing. My actual association with him in Japan was limited to other than just seeing him in the barracks and saying, hi, Ozzy. Did he have any interest in the Russian language? Somewhere along the line, he was reading a Russian book or something. I'm not sure, again, whether it was written in Russian or whether it was written in the American language. It pertained to the Russian philosophy, but there was something in my mind that I associate reading this type of literature. I think it was in Japan, but I'm not sure, though. Do you have any impression of him studying the Russian language as such? In actually sitting down and studying it, no. In seeking to become familiar with the language, I would say no, that I do not, because I just don't have any real concrete recollections for the individual other than just brief glimpses. Were you still acquainted with him? Still stationed with him when there arose an incident where he had an altercation with the non-commissioned officer? I'm not sure. Oswald got in a fight in Atsugi. I'm not sure. It seems to me I was, but again, I'm not sure. It either came, I truthfully can't say, but there's something, again, maybe something I read since then, or since then when all this came out, something that I read. But there's something in my mind that he had a fight with his non-commissioned officer or something of this nature. That wasn't extraordinary. That would occur once in a while. Yes, all of a sudden a guy blows up and swings at somebody, and right away it's a fight. And if it could be blown out of proportion too, it's the non-commissioned officer wanted to take it. And anytime take a swing or strike a blow was supposed to be a serious offense in the Marines. Well, is it or not? I don't know. By this time you were a sergeant. I believe I made sergeant right before I came home, or I think it was a week or two right before I came home. I was a sergeant before I left to come home, I believe. Still, at this time, Oswald continued to have the reputation that he was not an aggressive person. No, I don't think. I think he came out of his shell. To coin a phrase, he was becoming older and more mature, and he stood a little more for his personal rights. At least this is an opinion that you get from the incident that he did have there in the barracks, not from close relationships with him. Did you have a recollection that in Japan he began to stand up for his own rights? Yes. He was a little more aggressive than he was back in the States. Yes. Again, this might go back to an area that he was too scared the first year or so, 9 months when he was in the Marine Corps, after coming out of the initial indoctrination of coming out of training, and then he becomes himself. So you can't make a subjective appraisal during that first 9 months. Did he ever express any sympathy towards the Communist Party? None that I recall. Toward communist principles? None that I recall. Or Marxist doctrines? None that I recall, no sir. Or did he ever discuss those subjects with you in your presence? I'm not sure. He didn't discuss them to any great length or to any issue that I would recall. Nothing to excite you. Nothing that I would attach any political significance to. And what was his attitude towards discipline in the Marine Corps? Was it antagonistic? Was it different in any degree from other Marines? No, I don't think that it was. I think he was like any other Marine, that he made his bed and now he was going to have to lie in it. He volunteered. A lot of complaining, just as anyone else did, but nothing that you could say was any different than any other individual. However, he, again, going back to the incident that he did have, he was somewhat, if you want to call it, hostile, so to speak, to authority. He must have been, or he had something that would bother him, that he would flare up once in a while. He would? Well, excuse me, can you give me any incident? Well, just going back, that would express your opinion. Well, in Japan or something, possibly in the barracks, I recall, or like in Biloxi, he had some scuffles. I said he was coming out of his shell and showing more aggressiveness, but I wouldn't say that this guy is a troublemaker. I would say that the opinion in him would be that you couldn't depend on him in a situation, that you could give him a responsibility. But then you couldn't really say that he would accept it, but you could be sure with other individuals you knew that they would accept it. But I don't think that he did this only because he wasn't sure of himself. I think if you did give him authority and he realized what the position of authority was, that he would accept it and he would probably pride himself in it. But at least during this period of time, he hadn't reached the stage of dependability that you men of higher rank would rely on. Well, I wasn't in a position to delegate authority to him. But again, as I say, this is a personal opinion. Did in any conversation that you had with him, or any conversations in your presence, which he wasn't present in, was there any mention about his being in Chicago? No. Or Milwaukee? I cannot say. I don't recall. All right. They're asking questions they already know the answer to, okay? They're asking about Chicago. I'm assuming because when Oswald gets arrested, he had the American Bakery Company check stub in his pocket, which was issued in Chicago. That's the only connection to Chicago that I'm aware of at all. And a Milwaukee, Wisconsin connection? What fucking connection to Oswald is in Milwaukee? Here's something for you guys to do. Can anybody out there show me any single reference ever of Oswald connected to Milwaukee, Wisconsin? Ever, or any level, because I don't know of any. All right, let me continue. I cannot say, I don't recall. Did he ever mention somebody by the name of Jack Ruby or Rubenstein? No, sir, not to the best of my knowledge. I never heard that name associated with him. Even when he was in Japan, did he tend to stay to himself by and large? I would say yes, I think he did. Again, I couldn't be sure because he was in a different crew and they would be on liberty at a different time. Did you ever recall him being intoxicated? Not distinctly, no. It seems to me that here again, it's just a picture in my mind that he would come in the barracks feeling good and acting silly. So whether you would associate intoxication with it, did he ever get in any fights while you were over in Japan? Oh, he probably did. Probably no more than any other individual in a close relationship with the people that you're there with. Did he ever talk about General Robert E. Lee or any possible relationships that he might have had in the distant past or associations by name? It seems to me that there was. He was quite proud of Harvey Oswald. There was some relationship there in the Civil War type of thing. I'm not sure what it was. During your period of association with him and knowledge of him, did he have a reputation for being an oddball of any kind? Well, I think the term is loosely taken. Yes, oddball is attributed to his characteristics that he did have. There might have been a lot of oddballs in the Marines. There are a lot of oddballs in the Marines. Let's just say there are a lot of oddballs everywhere. But nothing occurred that would lead you to describe him as an oddball. Well, he was different. You could use it, what an oddball means to you and what an oddball means to myself and to everyone. It's different. Well, I'm trying to go along with you. He was different. He was a different individual, I would say, than the normal personality that you would see in the Marine Corps, because he was, which I previously stated, I think he was a quiet, if you want to call it a reserved individual that had a feminine characteristic. That to me, he was shy, so to speak, and a lot of times he felt sorry because the rest of the guys were most of the time picking on him. This goes back to Ozzy the Rabbit incident. And he was somewhat the frail little puppy in the litter. At least this was the opinion I think they got from him, and maybe he fell right into this image all along through the Marine Corps. Maybe it just followed him, and maybe physically, like I say, he was not an impressive specimen, and at that time, he wasn't like the Marine Corps tries to portray as one of these big type individualists, and he didn't fall into that, and he consequently was an oddball from the Marine Corps' own definition of what the Marines are supposed to be, ideally supposed to be. So he was argumentatively inclined. Somewhat. I wouldn't say he was. He just took the opposite side of the argument, but I think he was possibly more intelligent than most of the individuals that were there in the Marine Corps. Well, I wouldn't say possibly. I would say he appeared to me to be more intelligent than most of them. Are you drawing the distinction between when you say intelligence, education, and the development of intelligence? Let's just say his capacity, and he appeared to be better developed, even not knowing what his educational background was at the time. At least his diction and his knowledge of different subjects appeared to be most advanced than some of the other people in the group or in the groups that he was in. Do you think there might have been any resentment on that account? There might have been. I suppose the frail, maybe he portrayed that image, frail, know-it-all, studious type of person. And of course, some of the individuals, this is maybe why they get in the Marine Corps, to get away from the type of individual or scholastic problems or school. Do you have any impressions of what kind of a marksman he was? I don't know. He was not in my platoon. At least I don't think he was. Ooh. Fucking ooh. Okay, this is bringing me back to Alan R. Feld. I'm going to have to go. I just went over these documents. I'm pretty goddamn sure that, oh my God, this is making so much sense. Harvey Oswald was in platoon 2060. Lee Oswald, we're not sure what group he was in. Alan R. Feld was in the platoon 2060 with Harvey Oswald, and I'm pretty goddamn sure Powers was in that group, and that's why he doesn't fucking remember him. That's why he doesn't remember him. Oh, I got the photograph too. I'm gonna have to go dig. Ooh, I'm gonna go do some digging when I get out of here. I don't know. He was not in my platoon. At least I don't think he was. I don't have any conscious recollection of him there. But all the Marines trained to shoot the rifle proficiently and the pistol and the Browning automatic rifle. Was there any scuttlebutt that he was an officer hater? No. Did he evidence, as far as you recall, any impatience with people who appeared not to have command of any particular subject that he had? I don't know. Maybe not more so than anything else. He had the patience to teach me chess, but then again, you would sit there and pondering a move or something, and he, as I recall now, he would say, "Come on, let's get going." And he seemed to be an individual that wanted to keep things moving at a rapid pace. Did you have any impression that he had a tendency, maybe I asked you this, to keep by himself? For himself to keep by himself? To keep by himself. I don't know. I don't think I can truly answer that because you don't think you had enough contact with him in Japan because he's not a member of your platoon. See, he just led him on that fucking answer. He just totally led him on that answer. Jesus Christ. That's correct. In an FBI interview, did you express the opinion that he was resentful of authority? And do you still hold that view? Okay, so now we have documentation that there's a fucking FBI interview of Powers. Okay, I don't think we have that. I'll double check. I don't think we got it. He probably was not resentful to authority. He was resentful to the position of authority that he could not command, not of the authority itself, I believe. I see. It didn't make a difference who was administering, rather, what the authority was. It was probably the individual administering it, probably. Do you remember a Marine by the name of Delgado? I can't say that I do, no, sir. You should, because Delgado's I'm pretty sure Delgado was in one of his early courses. But Delgado, his name is Nelson Delgado. That's not the name listed on the fucking Marine intake sheet. Nope. It was like Umberto or something like that, or Hubert, or I don't know. I'll have to double check, but it sure as hell was not Nelson. This is like the third or fourth person I find with different names on the duty rosters. I can't say that I do, no, sir. Thornley? No, sir. You mentioned Murphy. Yes, sir. What was Murphy's first name, do you recall? Jim Murphy. I don't think that was it either. I'm not sure. A Marine, I think it was Paul Murphy. A Marine by the name of, we used to call him Murph. Murray? No. Osborne? No, sir. Shoemaker? No. Call? No, sir. Botello? No, sir. That may have been pronounced Botello. Did he spend any time listening to records, classical music, and things like that? Not that I recall, no, sir. Did you ever have any discussions with him, or were there any discussions in your presence at the time that he was present about religion? I don't recall. Botello's full name was James Anthony Botello. Call's full name was Richard Dennis Call. You mentioned Camarada, Donald P. Camarada. Yes, sir. And do you remember a Marine by the name of Peter Cassisi? No, sir, I don't. If I saw the face, I could probably recall. A fellow by the name of Peter Francis Connor. Yes, I recall that name. Do you recall a commanding officer at Santa Ana by the name of John Donovan? No, sir. Do you remember a Marine by the name of John Heindel? No, sir. Sometimes called Heidel. This is at Sugi now. No. Okay, so, I have to emphasize. Jenner is asking these questions to determine which Oswald that motherfucking Powers knew, and he knew the real Lee Oswald. Because all these names that he's asking him are people who are in the group with Harvey Oswald, right? I'm hoping you people can come around and see what's going on here as we go through these. But that's what's happening here. They're trying to determine which Oswald was, when, and where. Jenner asks, a Marine by the name of Erwin Donald Lewis. No, sir. I think I was asked about Murphy, David Christie Murphy. Murphy's name was Paul Edward Murphy. Yes. Do you remember him in the Far East? Yes. He was in the same crew that I was in. Osborne's first name is Mac. Well, it completes my examination and any further reflection in which I will ask you. Okay, so right as it's getting good, they cut the questioning. No, there's nothing else I can add. I think the problem is hundreds of kids running around like him can be easily influenced, blah, blah, blah. And that's pretty much it. Leads us to the testimony of John Donovan, which we'll get to at some point. I'm trying to do this more in a chronological manner. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. Remember, I'm going to have signed books up on Buy Me a Coffee here in the next couple days. Remember to get a copy of that. Lee Harvey Oswald in Black and White, Volume 2 is well underway, which is why we're covering all this stuff again. But that's going to do it for me, guys. And I'll be back shortly. Thank you much.